G'day guys, welcome back to ABCPE, the site where we try and make VCE as easy as ABC. This is part 3 on our Making It Training Program series, and this is all about training principles. Continuing on from the theme of using Scott Pendlebury to make this training program, we're going to delve into the training principles today, and this is what they look like on the study design. There's a fair few to remember there. This is a little part of the study design, but also a very important, often examined part. Bear with us a little bit here on this FITT Donald Duck only makes peach vanilla ice cream, because there are so many training principles to remember: frequency, intensity, time, type, etc. We've made this little acronym to try and help you remember them. So frequency is about how often you train. Very simply, if you want to improve, we're going to train in 3 sessions a week. If we just want to maintain a fitness component such as flexibility, we might only do that 2 times per week. Intensity is a little bit harder to get your head around. It's basically how hard you train. And there's a lot of measures of intensities. Rate of perceived exertion you'd only use for your anaerobic sessions, because your heart rate doesn't have time to catch up to your intensity because it goes with such short duration. Percentage heart rate's a really easy one to use, and I'd recommend using that for most sessions, or your aerobic running sessions, absolutely. Percentage VO2 max test is a little bit harder. It's basically usually around 10% less than your heart rate, but you still do need to know it. Percentage of your 1 repetition max is how we would get you in the gym. So 1 repetition max of your bench press, if you can lift 100 kilograms once, 1, you're a fair unit, and also 2, that is your max RM, a great intensity scale for resistance sessions. This Borg scale on the right hand side, this is your RPE. Always struggled in the past. Well, why would it start at 6 and finish at 20? Actually found out this year that if it starts at 6, that's basically the equivalent of your resting heart rate being about 60 beats per minute. And all the way up at 20, that's the equivalent of your max heart rate, usually at about 200 beats per minute. Time is the next principle we're going to talk about, and this can refer to either length of the session. We say a minimum of 20 minutes if you want to see improvement, or either the length of the program, which means at least 6 weeks to get improvement from a training program. Type just refers to what training method. Are you going to use resistance? Are you going to use a continuous training session? And the key part is to make sure that the training method you select is specific to what you're trying to train. So Scotty Pendlebury, most of the time he spends running, so you wouldn't do a whole lot of swimming sessions for him. Now we get into our Donald Duck makes peach vanilla ice cream. The detraining, these are the lesser known principles, but still important. There's often like a multiple choice question or a 1 or 2 mark question on all these smaller training principles. But detraining basically means if Pendlebury stops training, then you're going to lose his training effects. Bit harsh here on Stewie Dew. He was a great footballer, premiership player, but once he stopped training, he's going to lose his aerobic fitness. As you can see now, he's doing a good job as a coach, but maybe lost a bit of his fitness there. The second D in the Donald Duck refers to diminishing returns. That basically means the more you train, the closer you get to your genetic potential, which is your maximum how good you can get, which means you're going to see less improvements as you go. So if you've got a rookie like Jaden Stevenson, for his first couple of pre-season, he's going to see really big improvements on things like his time trial running. But now Scotty Pendlebury, as he's getting closer to his genetic potential, he can't get any fitter. He's going to not see as big improvements as a rookie like Stevenson. Maintenance is a pretty simple one. Just it's easier to maintain our fitness to improve. All you have to do to maintain fitness is do 2 sessions per week. Next principle we've got is progression, or that which used to be known as overload. Progression is now in what is stated in the study design, so remember progression is the word. This is a super important, often examined principle. Basically it means that as you adapt, as you get better, you need to increase the load. So you need to use more weights, or you need to run further, or need to run at a higher intensity. There must be some form of change in your training program as your body adapts to that training. The key rule that you must remember, you can only overload 1 variable and by no more than 10%. Super important to remember that. Variety, just as it states, that train the same thing over and over again can get boring. So for Scotty Pendlebury, you might put in a boxing session every so often just to mix up those running sessions if you are training your aerobic power. The other principles still apply. Still has to be at a good percentage of his heart rate. Still has to go for at least 20 minutes. But just doing a boxing session might spice things up a little bit. So the last training principle we're going to talk about is individuality. On the left hand side here we've got the great man Stockers. So if we gave the same program to Stockers and to Scotty Pendlebury, both of those will respond differently to those sessions. So as a coach, you've got to be aware that you might have to change things up depending on who you're training. Here is an example of a pretty difficult question from last year's exam. 5-mark question where you had to use the FITT principle to evaluate how good this session is. How I tell my kids to do this is on the side of their paper, they should write FITT, frequency, intensity, time type, and then have a positive or a negative column. And then they should go through this training session and say, okay, frequency, let's tick this off. To improve, they need 3 sessions a week. So do they do that? In this case, there's 3 stationary bike or sprint interval sessions. So yes, that's a positive, you tick that off. However, a negative also is there's only 1 gym session. So that means that you're not going to get improvements from that resistance training session because you're only doing it once a week. So often these training programs will have a positive or a negative. I've gone through that for you. I'll give you a chance to read that. This is how I interpreted that last question. It's important to note that when answering that 5-mark question, you don't need all that information. There's a lot of information on that slide, but it's just an example of how you would go through and tackle a question. Here is the VCAR answer guide. Very small amount of people got full marks for that. So only 10% of the state. That's about that 40 study score and above. Okay guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully that makes training principles as simple as ABC. Please go to our website if you want any more information. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you soon.